Hello, esteemed gentlemen. The most dangerous man alive is the one who learns to enjoy his own company. Unknown, but definitely a Sigma male in hiding. Let's get one thing straight. When a Sigma male goes single for too long, he doesn't get lonely. He gets lethal. In a world that screams, "Date now, settle fast, or you'll die alone with cats and Wi-Fi," the Sigma shrugs, pours a black coffee, and upgrades his mind like it's a new OS. No dating app, no soft launches, just raw solitude and silent power. Here's a fact that should concern anyone trying to fix him. A recent study found that men who spend more time in solitude tend to score higher in self-reliance, introspection, and emotional control, and Sigmas treat those like weapons. But here's the twist. The longer he's single, the less he wants what the world is offering, and the more the world starts to want him. Why? Because while others lose themselves in relationships, the Sigma sharpens himself in isolation. And the transformation? It's not romantic, it's evolutionary. Let's break down why the longer a Sigma male is single, the more unstoppable, and honestly, unbothered he becomes. And trust me, it's not what your therapist or dating coach wants you to hear. Number 1. He turns down women. Most men would kill to touch. He turns down women most men would kill to touch. And not because he's arrogant, but because he sees through the illusion most can't. A Sigma male doesn't chase beauty. He dissects it. He doesn't look at a stunning woman and lose his mind. He looks at her and calculates the cost. Not just the surface-level price, but the hidden emotional taxes, the entitlement, the need for constant validation, the power games disguised as independence. While most men are hypnotized by the packaging, the Sigma studies the product, the warranty, and the fine print. And more often than not, he walks away. He knows the difference between beauty and value. Beauty can be bought, filtered, and faked. But value? That's rare. That's character, peace, intelligence, restraint. And sadly, he's learned the hard way that many of the women society puts on a pedestal often bring chaos wrapped in seduction. So when they come around, confident they'll be worshipped just for existing, he doesn't react like the average guy. He doesn't foam at the mouth. He's calm, almost too calm, and that unsettles them. They're used to men bending over backward, changing their personalities, jumping through emotional hoops just to be near them. But the Sigma doesn't jump. He doesn't audition. He filters. He turns down drama in designer heels. He's uninterested in battles of ego, and it's not because he's bitter or jaded. It's because he's built peace in his life and he's ruthless about protecting it. To most men, being with a beautiful woman feels like winning. To a Sigma, it only counts as a win if she brings more clarity than chaos. If she's peace, not noise. So yes, he'll say no to the girl who thinks her looks are enough. He'll walk away from the one everyone else is chasing. And while some call him crazy, he knows exactly what he's doing. Because once you've tasted solitude that sharpens you, attention that drains you feels like a scam. He's not hard to please. He's just impossible to fool. Number 2, becomes a mirror most can't stare into. When a Sigma male enters a room, he doesn't try to blend in. He simply exists as he is. No masks, no filters, no forced charm. And that kind of raw authenticity acts like a mirror people didn't ask to look into. It reflects their insecurities, their hidden motives, their unspoken fears. He doesn't even have to say much. His silence alone becomes unsettling. Because he's not playing the social game, everyone else becomes hyper-aware that they are. People start to feel exposed around him. Not because he's judging them out loud, but because being near someone who doesn't seek approval forces others to confront how badly they crave it. His presence disrupts their performance. They begin second-guessing their words, their gestures, their persona, and that's exactly why many can't stand being around him for too long. It's not that he's mean, cold, or confrontational. It's that he's real, brutally, unwaveringly real. And in a world addicted to pretense, that kind of energy strips away facades without trying. It's psychological discomfort without a single insult. He's not reflecting who people pretend to be. He's reflecting who they actually are. And most can't handle that. This is why shallow conversations feel awkward around him. Fake confidence crumbles. Inflated egos start leaking. And people either try to impress him harder or they retreat entirely, because he forces an unspoken choice: elevate or exit. And here's the brutal part. He doesn't care which one you choose. He's not interested in fixing, mentoring, or saving anyone. He simply exists on his frequency. If you resonate, fine. If you don't, he won't lower his energy to make you comfortable. That's your work, not his. So yes, he becomes a mirror, but not the flattering kind. He's the mirror that shows the stuff you've been avoiding. The internal junk, the inconsistencies, the masks. And the longer you stare into it, the more you realize he's not the intimidating one. It's what you see in yourself that makes you want to look away. Number 3, he cultivates depths. Most partners aren't trained to handle. A Sigma male doesn't just spend time alone, he dives into himself. Not in a poetic Instagram quote kind of way, but in the brutally honest, uncomfortable, shadow-facing way most people avoid their entire lives. While others chase temporary connections, social validation, or romantic distractions, he ventures inward, deep, into his traumas, his patterns, his dark thoughts, his hidden strengths. He breaks himself down, studies the pieces, and rebuilds from scratch. That kind of self-work creates layers most people don't even realize exist. So when someone new shows interest and says, "I want to get to know you," they have no idea what they're signing up for. They expect surface-level access. They think they'll ask a few deep-sounding questions and unlock some mysterious vulnerability. But what they find is depth, real depth, that demands emotional stamina, psychological maturity, and a level of presence most people have never been trained to hold. And that's the silent heartbreak. They may be drawn to his mystery, his self-possession, his intensity. But the moment they step into his emotional world, they realize it's not built for casual tourists. There are no shortcuts, no scripts, no Instagram therapy jargon that works on him. He's not playing the usual game of oversharing to feel seen. He already sees himself, and that unnerves people who haven't even begun that journey. They come expecting to connect with a man. Instead, they find themselves standing at the edge of an abyss they didn't know existed. And most people aren't ready for that. They want transparency, but only the kind that doesn't challenge them. They want honesty, but not the kind that exposes their own contradictions. They want depth, but not the kind that forces them to confront their emotional limits. So what happens? They pull back, or try to simplify him into something digestible. But the Sigma doesn't shrink to fit. He doesn't flatten his soul just to make someone else comfortable. By the time someone realizes what it really means to know him, they're already drowning in unfamiliar waters, wondering why they ever thought they could swim that deep without first learning how to breathe. Number 4, he outsmarts the social clock and dismantles it. The Sigma male doesn't just ignore the social clock. He disassembles it like a mechanic tearing apart a faulty engine. Marriage by 30, kids by 35, settling down because your aunt keeps asking awkward questions at family dinners. He doesn't flinch, because to him, those timelines aren't goals, they're traps, dressed up as tradition. Where most people are sprinting towards socially approved milestones, driven by fear of being left behind, the Sigma steps back and asks, left behind by who? And why should I care? He watches his peers rush into relationships they're not emotionally ready for, take on debt for weddings they don't need, and chase validation through parenthood, not purpose. Meanwhile, he's busy replacing that external pressure with something infinitely more powerful: internal direction. He doesn't move based on what age he is. He moves based on what phase of awareness he's in. That's why people misunderstand him. They think he's lazy, non-committal, or just not ready. But he's not delayed. He's disconnected from the illusion that time equals value. He doesn't marry because it's expected. He doesn't settle down because it's time. He refuses to build a life based on other people's panic. Instead of a ticking clock, he uses a compass, one that points inward. Is this choice aligned with who I am becoming? Is this relationship adding depth or just checking a box? Is this commitment a growth decision or a fear-based reaction? Those are his metrics, and what's wild is, this mindset doesn't make him slower, it makes him clearer. While others are dealing with midlife meltdowns and emotional hangovers from rushed decisions, he's operating with calm precision. His life isn't defined by speed, it's defined by direction. And that direction? It has nothing to do with deadlines and everything to do with alignment. So when people say, "You're running out of time," the Sigma smiles, because he's not racing them. He's already off their map and drawing his own. Number 5. He becomes dangerous to the ego of the average woman. A Sigma male is immune to the usual spells. Beauty doesn't hypnotize him. Status doesn't distract him. And femininity alone, without substance, doesn't earn his attention. That's what makes him dangerous to the ego of the average woman. Not because he's disrespectful or hostile, but because he simply doesn't need what she's used to weaponizing. She walks in expecting admiration. She gets indifference. She flaunts her looks, and he barely reacts. Not because he's trying to play it cool, but because he's genuinely not moved. He's seen too many beautiful women hide emotional chaos behind a pretty smile. To him, beauty without character is like a luxury car with no engine, impressive for 5 seconds, then completely useless. And women feel it. They sense when a man sees right through their carefully curated image. Most guys will inflate her ego just to get a shot. But the Sigma, he doesn't flatter for access. If she's all exterior and no interior, she starts to feel like a walking costume. And that subtle shift from being desired to being analyzed is something the average woman doesn't know how to handle. She might get defensive, confused, even offended, because she's not used to her looks being irrelevant. She's been taught that beauty is the value, but to a Sigma, it's just packaging. He's looking for soul, discipline, depth, self-awareness. If that's not there, he quietly disconnects emotionally, mentally, energetically. No drama, no scene, just absence. And here's the kicker. His indifference isn't cold, it's clarifying. It forces a silent reckoning. She either evolves beyond vanity or retreats into the comfort of being idolized by lesser men. There is no middle. That's why the Sigma is dangerous to the ego. He doesn't attack it, he simply doesn't feed it. And in a world where many women survive on external validation, being seen as hollow by a man she can't manipulate cuts deeper than any insult. Because when a man sees beauty and still walks away, that's when she realizes she brought a mask to a meeting, and he came to see the face underneath. Number 6. He turns casual sex into a philosophical disinterest. Casual sex loses its thrill for the Sigma male, not because he's prudish or repressed, but because he's evolved past the illusion. What once sparked curiosity now feels mechanical, predictable, a repetitive loop with no depth and even less meaning. It's not that he can't get it. It's that he's outgrown what it offers: fleeting pleasure, emotional ambiguity, and usually a big dose of post-clarity boredom. At one point, sure, the mystery of it all had a pull. The game, the chase, the conquest, it served its purpose. But after a while, he sees it for what it is: transactional, surface level, and often emotionally hollow. Most people use it to fill voids they refuse to name. They call it liberation, but it's often just distraction in disguise. And a Sigma? He hates self-deception, especially in himself. He starts to ask deeper questions. What am I gaining here, really? Am I connecting or just colliding with someone else's loneliness? Is this intimacy or just a momentary agreement to avoid silence? When the answers come back empty, the appetite fades. It's not discipline holding him back, it's disinterest, a lack of stimulation, a sense that he's already cracked the code and found nothing worth staying for. What makes this unsettling to others is that he's not bitter about it. He doesn't bash the experience, doesn't shame those still playing the game. He simply exits the arena with a quiet shrug, unaffected. That neutrality is what makes him so immune to sexual manipulation. He doesn't chase it, he doesn't crave it, he doesn't need it. And once someone loses the ability to control him with access to their body, they lose their only card. That's why some people find him cold or unreachable. They're used to sex being a shortcut to attention, influence, or emotional leverage. But with the Sigma, that shortcut doesn't exist. He's rewired the reward system. To him, real intimacy isn't physical access, it's psychological safety, intellectual synergy, energetic alignment. If that's not there, you could be the most beautiful person alive. And he'll still feel nothing. because for him casual sex isn't temptation, it's just noise with good lighting. Number 7. He starts to attract power instead of people. The Sigma male doesn't chase crowds, approval, or popularity, and that's exactly why power starts chasing him. The more he withdraws from the noise of society, the more he sharpens himself in silence. While others are networking for status or begging to be seen, he's building something stronger, undeniability. Not by screaming louder, but by becoming so precise, so skilled, so centered, that his presence alone changes the temperature of any room he walks into. And here's the irony. When he stops caring about being liked, influence begins to grow in his shadow. People become curious, even obsessed with trying to figure him out. His detachment becomes magnetism. His boundaries turn into allure. His refusal to perform makes him unpredictable, and that unpredictability feels like power in a world obsessed with control. But here's the twist. He's not using this pull to gain followers, build a fan base, or win admiration. He's using it to move silently through doors others don't even know exist. Opportunities come, not because he's chasing them, but because people want to align with whatever energy he's mastered. He stops attracting people who want to consume him, and starts drawing in situations that demand he lead. The less accessible he becomes, the more valuable his presence gets. People want to pick his brain, borrow his confidence, extract his clarity, but he's selective. He doesn't trade his energy for compliments. He trades it for leverage, quietly, strategically, without apology. Eventually, people are no longer the prize. Power is. Power over his time, his mind, his decisions, his reality, not in a control freak way, but in a sovereign, grounded, laser-focused way. He stops asking, "Who's around me?" and starts asking, "What am I building?" And anyone who doesn't contribute to that vision fades into the background. Because for the Sigma, the goal isn't to be popular, it's to be unshakable. And the fewer people he needs, the more power he holds. Not power over others, but something far rarer, power over himself. Number 8. He prioritizes inner upgrades over romantic downloads. Every month, a Sigma male spends single isn't time lost, it's an upgrade in progress. While most people view solitude as a waiting room for love, he treats it like a high-security lab. Skills get sharper, patterns get recoded, emotional glitches get debugged. He's not binge-watching loneliness, he's reprogramming his entire operating system. He's not chasing butterflies or planning candlelit dates. He's auditing his discipline, refining his thinking, killing old belief systems that no longer serve him. Each week he's running diagnostics on his own identity, asking, where am I still weak? What haven't I mastered? What's still slowing me down? This isn't spiritual fluff, it's practical warfare. Inner development, self-discipline, adaptability, those become his currency. While others are downloading romance, hoping to feel complete, he's running a full-stack upgrade on who he is. So when someone finally enters his life and tries to connect, they better not be offering drama, dependency, or outdated emotional software. Because he's operating on something faster, cleaner, more intentional. And the truth is, most people are still glitching with unhealed trauma, ego-based communication, and a need for constant reassurance. That's fine until they try to plug into him. Then suddenly the connection feels off, slow, out of sync, laggy. Relationships begin to feel like pop-ups, distracting, clunky, full of bugs, and unless the other person is also upgrading, daily, consciously, ruthlessly, he feels the slowdown instantly. It's not about being better than them. It's about realizing they're not optimized for the frequency he now lives on. That's the unspoken frustration. He's not against love. He's just unwilling to download someone else's emotional code if it's going to corrupt the system he spent years building. He knows the cost of interruption, and he refuses to pay it for mediocre connection wrapped in good intentions. So while others are panicking about being alone, he's quietly upgrading, becoming faster, smarter, lighter. Every flaw that once controlled him, patched, every weakness, refactored, every false narrative, rewritten. Because for a Sigma, solitude isn't silence, it's the sound of software evolving. Number 9. He learns to dissect female behavior without falling for it. Extended solitude turns a Sigma male into an expert observer, not just of himself but of the complex dance of female behavior. And he doesn't fall for the usual tricks. Over time, he develops a kind of sniper-level awareness. able to spot manipulation tactics from a mile away, read validation games before they even begin, and recognize emotional bait that most men trip over without a second thought. This isn't some arrogant macho act, it's hard-earned clarity, forged in silence and self-reflection. Where the average guy might get pulled into endless cycles of chasing approval or trying to fix problems that aren't his to solve, the Sigma simply watches, analyzes, and moves on. He's not cold or dismissive. It's that he understands the scripts behind the scenes so well that the emotional theatrics no longer hold power over him. He sees when a compliment is a setup, when vulnerability is weaponized, and when drama is a test. Most men get caught up in the performance. He sees the playbook. That distance creates a natural immunity. Because he's not reacting emotionally or seeking validation, the usual tactics that hook others feel empty to him, like junk food for a gourmet palate. He's no longer vulnerable to the subtle traps disguised as affection, or neediness disguised as intimacy. And this makes him dangerous to those who rely on emotional manipulation to control or influence. They expect him to respond like the average man, desperate, eager, or confused. Instead, he navigates with a steady hand and an unshakable calm. The moments that would break others are mere blips for him. He moves past them without losing energy or respect for himself. It's not about mistrusting women or building walls. It's about mastering awareness and self-control. The Sigma learns to hold space for complexity without getting caught in its web. That kind of insight comes with time alone, and once gained, it's nearly impossible to unsee. So while many men get tangled in emotional games, the Sigma just steps around them. Because once you've dissected the patterns, the bait loses its hook, and freedom becomes your natural state. Number 10. He finds romance less stimulating than silence. For the Sigma male, solitude isn't something he tolerates, it's something he craves. Over time, the silence becomes addictive. Not the kind of silence that feels lonely or empty, but the kind that brings clarity, insight, and unfiltered connection with himself. And once he's lived in that kind of stillness, romance starts to feel different, less thrilling, less essential, less stimulating than the raw, undiluted peace of being completely alone. He realizes that most romantic interactions, even the ones with gorgeous, seemingly ideal partners, introduce noise, distractions, expectations, emotional static. And unless a woman brings something real, something aligned, something that adds to the signal rather than muffling it, he feels the difference instantly. Conversations feel forced. Presence feels diluted. The energy around her feels like a break in his mental clarity rather than a contribution to it. It's not that he's bitter or disconnected. It's that he's learned to tune into a frequency of stillness that most people never access. In that space, he creates, refines, and evolves. And when someone enters his life and brings chaos disguised as passion or validation disguised as love, he notices the drop in quality, like adding static to a high-definition channel. He begins to see how much romance, for many people, is just noise management, a way to escape themselves, a distraction wrapped in dopamine and drama. And he's not interested in being distracted anymore. He doesn't want another heartbeat in his life unless it beats in rhythm with his. No performance, no illusion, no compromise of internal peace for external attention. So the more time he spends in solitude, the higher his standards rise, not for looks or status, but for energetic impact. He asks, does this person elevate my stillness or shatter it? If the answer isn't crystal clear, he pulls back without guilt, because he's already found the most potent intimacy there is, peace of mind. And once you've tasted that in its purest form, romance without resonance just feels like background noise. Number 11. He becomes a mystery women chase but can't translate. The longer a Sigma male remains outside the social current, the more he begins to radiate a presence that confuses, fascinates, and magnetizes women. He doesn't chase, doesn't overexpose, doesn't perform. And in a world built on oversharing, attention-seeking, and algorithm-approved behavior, his silence hits like thunder. Women notice, but they can't quite place why. He's not playing hard to get, he's just hard to understand. He doesn't speak the typical emotional dialect. He's not fluent in validation games or passive-aggressive cues. He doesn't orbit compliments, emojis, or digital breadcrumbs. So when women try to read him using the same scripts they've used their whole lives, flirting, testing, over-communicating, they come up empty. His signals don't decode like the others. And that confusion, it hooks them, because the Sigma's entire way of being feels like an unsolved puzzle. He's grounded but detached, engaged but unreadable, present without being performative. He makes eye contact without trying to impress. He listens without waiting to reply. He exists in full energy without asking for permission. And that kind of self-containment is intoxicating. What throws women off is that he doesn't give them what they're used to receiving from men: immediate attention, predictable reactions, or emotional availability on demand. Instead, he offers a mirror they can't quite interpret, and so they chase, not always overtly, but energetically, through curiosity, through confusion, through questions they don't even know how to ask. But the Sigma doesn't bend to the pursuit. He doesn't crack open to be understood. He's not hiding anything. He's just not interested in translating himself for anyone. If you don't speak the frequency he lives on, that's not his problem. And that boundary only deepens the intrigue. Because here's the truth. Women don't just want attention. They want to feel compelled. And the Sigma's mystique doesn't beg to be decoded. It dares you to evolve to meet it. Most don't. They try to label him, simplify him, or pull him back into the world they understand. But he's already rewritten the code. He is the glitch in the system. And no matter how hard they chase, they never quite catch the signal. Number 12. He replaces lust with precision curiosity. For the Sigma male, the longer he stays single, the more his raw desire transforms into something sharper: precision curiosity. He's no longer pulled by lust like a dog on a leash. He's not hypnotized by curves, smiles, or well-rehearsed charm. Instead, he watches, he studies, he decodes. Every behavior becomes a data point, every flirtation, a test case, every emotional shift, a variable in a system he no longer needs to chase because he's already mapped it. The mystery that once hooked him now feels algorithmic, predictable, repetitive. And because he's detached from the outcome, he sees the patterns most men miss. He watches how attraction is offered as bait, how compliments come wrapped in expectations, how vulnerability is sometimes deployed as a power move, not a bridge. Where the average man gets drawn in, the Sigma takes a mental note and moves on, not with judgment, but with clarity. He's not angry, he's not bitter, he's just over it. That's the part that unnerves people. He doesn't need to prove anything, doesn't need to win anyone over. He's gone from being seduced by appearances to being fascinated by why people do what they do. And that shift makes him immune to manipulation. What once stirred his blood now activates his mind. It's not that he's celibate or detached from women entirely. He just refuses to chase chaos packaged as excitement. And what replaces lust isn't repression, it's discernment. He knows the cost of emotional entanglement that doesn't serve his path. He knows how easy it is to get pulled into someone else's dysfunction just because they're beautiful and damaged in an interesting way. He's done with that. Now, if a woman wants access, she has to offer something beyond aesthetics: depth, discipline, self-awareness, alignment. Otherwise, she's just another entry in the system, studied, understood, and quietly exited. Because for the Sigma male, attraction without substance is just noise with lipstick, and he's done chasing echoes. He's tracking truth. The longer a lion walks alone, the sharper his claws become, not for attack, but for precision. The longer a Sigma male stays single, the more he transforms into something society can't easily define or contain. While most are distracted by dating apps, deadlines, and domestic timelines, he's doing something far rarer: evolving without permission. He's not waiting for the one. He's becoming the one, for himself. And that journey rewires everything. He's not swiping for validation. He's sculpting his purpose. He's not longing for someone to complete him. He's eliminating every piece of himself that ever felt incomplete. And in doing so, he becomes a paradox: detached but deeply aware, solitary but magnetic, unavailable yet unforgettable. Women feel his shift, even if they can't name it. He doesn't play hard to get. He's just hard to access, unless you've earned the right to keep up. And that's what separates him from the masses. He's not in a race to be chosen. He's not afraid of being alone. He's not shrinking himself to fit into someone else's fantasy. He's building a life so whole that anything added must amplify, not distract. And that's the real threat. Because when a man no longer needs love, attention, or approval to feel powerful, he becomes someone the world can't quite handle and can never forget. Not because he's trying to be different, but because in a world of noise, he chose silence. In a world of masks, he became a mirror. And in a world obsessed with connection, he became the rarest force of all, a man who is complete without being captured. If this hit deeper than expected, don't just scroll away in silence. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss content that actually respects your intelligence. Like if you felt seen. Comment if you're walking this path alone and owning every step. Share this with someone who's evolving quietly, dangerously, and unapologetically. This isn't just content, it's a frequency. And if you're tuned in, you already know you're not alone. You're just ahead. Welcome to the tribe.